I know that maybe some of you wrote this morning, and so maybe you are still getting home, but it's quite late in the afternoon. So I'm guessing a lot of people are already home. I'm just going to let people join for a couple of seconds. And also, I want to clean my... Just going to do that. Sorry, I need to clean the lens. There we go. That's so much better. All right, just while we wait for everybody to join, remember the purpose of today is going to be going through some questions from paper 2. We did a paper 1. I am going to do another paper 1 as we get closer to the final being written. And also the good news, or the exciting news for members, if you don't know this, is my prediction video is going to be coming out tomorrow for you guys. So you're going to get to see it before everybody else. So members are going to have early access to my prediction videos. So paper 1 is going to come out tomorrow for you guys. And then paper 2 is going to come out probably on the Saturday for members. So you'll get to see it before everybody else does, which will give you a good head start on preparing. And I think what I'm going to do is I am going to then release the video later in the week on Friday for the public, for everybody else. So if your friends are asking, or you've been thinking, is she going to do another prediction video? Yes, I am. It's already shot, edited, ready to go. And you guys are going to get to see it tomorrow afternoon. It'll go live. So just also keep an eye out for that too. And then, of course, paper 2-1 will also come out. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with today's lessons and questions. And please remember throughout the video, ask your questions in the tab at the top or in your questions section so that I can answer you. I am going to focus largely on question 2 paper questions today, as well as the topics that go with it. You can obviously ask me any question you really want. It doesn't matter what paper, but the questions we're going to focus in are some of the requested questions that you wanted to cover, starting off with a genetics question. Okay, so let's start off with that one. And then we're going to move into the rest and some theory behind this. Okay. So let's begin with our cross here. It says the diagram below shows the inheritance of a flower color in snapdragon plants, and there are 2 alleles that control the flower color, red and white. And they are giving us some important information here, everybody, because they're telling us that there are 2 colors, but what's interesting is they're equally dominant to one another because of their size, right? So they've used a capital R and they've used a capital W, which means that this isn't a complete dominance example, and one color is not dominant over the other. But there are more clues that we need to go into, and that is the diagram. Now, it shows us that if we cross a red flower with a white flower, it produces a pink flower. Now, the moment you see this kind of thing in the exam, what you need to identify is the type of dominance that we see here. Now, whenever you mix 2 colors and you get a 3rd color, we should know that this is already incomplete dominance. Because if we look at it's when you have an intermediate, or you have a middle phenotype that is a mixture. And so if this individual is red, it must mean that its alleles are 2 capital R's, and this white must be 2 capital W's. Remember, why 2? Because every single allele has a minimum of 2 pair or 2 partners. And so you must always have 2, never any less than that. And then when it comes to our pink individual, we know that through inheritance, you inherit 1 allele from each parent. So this parent can only give an R, and this parent can only give a W. So that's going to be our alleles, or our genotype, that is going to produce this phenotype or pink, right? So now that we've broken this down, now we're going to have a better understanding of what to do with our questions. So the first question says, state the type of dominance shown in the snapdragons, which we've actually just identified already, which is great. We've saved some time, which is incomplete dominance. Then it says, give a reason for your answer in 241. Now, this is one of those questions where if you misidentify it, unfortunately, there's no continuous accuracy. So they're not going to like give it to you, right? They're not going to give you the reason, even though the reason is maybe right for your first choice. It must actually be what's in the memo. It can't just match what you thought it was. So when we speak about incomplete dominance and giving a reason for that answer, the reason must come from the information in the diagram. And you've got 2 marks here. And essentially what you're doing is you are saying, why do you know, or how do you know this is incomplete dominance? Well, you know it's incomplete dominance because if you cross a red parent with a white parent, then all the offspring are pink. And pink is an intermediate color, which means it is a mixture, and therefore it is incomplete dominance. So in your reasoning is going to be if you crossed a red parent with a white parent, all the offspring are pink, which is a intermediate or a mixture of these two. And that's what gets your 2 marks. So it's quite straightforward, this one. Then it says a gardener crossed 2 pink flowered snapdragons, and they wanted you to use a genetic cross to show the ratio of the expected phenotypes of the offspring. Now, this is for 6 marks, everybody, as you can see here, which means you are going to need to ensure that you lay this answer out correctly. Now, first things first, use a genetic cross to show the ratio of the expected phenotypes of 2 pink flowers. Now, as we worked it out earlier, 2 pink flowers is RW, right? So when you lay this out, it should be RW times RW, which is pink times pink, with a P1 in the margin, hey? That's parental generation number 1. Then below that, you're going to have to write out your full cross. Now, I'm going to just add a page quickly. What do I want to do here? I just want to add a blank page like that. So I'm going to draw the whole thing out for you. So this is how you get 6 out of 6 for your genetic crosses if you didn't already know this. We go P1 in the margin, and then we go pink flower times pink flower, right? Which is RW times RW. From there, what we need to do is we write the word meiosis, and in the margin we write gametes, and we get the following gametes. Now, yes, I put circles around my gametes. It's just a thing I've taught my students to do as well. It's for safety. It basically means the marker will never ever think that you've left them attached. You've given a big enough space between them that they know that these are individuals and they're separate. Below that, we must always write fertilization because that's the process that follows after this, right? Then in the margin, we go F1. And then I just draw my Punnett square. And I put in my alleles, making sure they stay in the right place, like that. And then I multiply them into the Punnett square. Right, which gives me that. Then I'm going to write out my genotype percentage. So I've got 50% RW, which are those two, 25% RR, and 25% WW, which means this has a ratio of 2 to 1 to 1. And then for my phenotype, which is actually the ratio they're looking for, it's 50% pink, 25% red, 25% white. And so we make sure the ratio matches that. 2 is to 1 is to 1. And then let me just show you how they would, let me just show you how they would mark this. Okay. So they would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, I know that this is obviously working out that you have to do, and that you're thinking, well, why don't I get a mark awarded for that? It depends on what they're asking you, because they were focusing in here on the phenotype. These two actually are the same thing. This genotype and this Punnett square are the same thing in terms of what they mean. I encourage my students to write them out. So not just leaving it as a Punnett square, but to write it out like this. And it does save you often from making mistakes. So that's how I would lay it out in order to get 6 out of 6. Okay, right. Let's just go back to the questions. So that is our genetics section of a cross. I chose this question also because it's becoming more and more common, everybody, in the final for them to ask you incomplete and codominance questions. So I thought this was a great one for us to practice, to get used to this kind of thing. And again, remember, if you want to ask any questions, put them in the chat, please. Or if there's anything you want me to clarify in these topics. Otherwise, I move on to the next question so that we can get through everything. For those of you who've just arrived, I'm just going to remind you that I've got some exciting news. The prediction video is coming out tomorrow for members, so you'll get to see it tomorrow. And that's ahead of everybody else. Everyone else is only going to see it on Friday. Okay, if there is no questions in the chat, I'm going to move on to the next question for us to cover and go over. And that next question, so you can orientate yourself with what we're doing, is going to be a human evolution question. This was, again, a question that was requested, and often it's a scary one because we always feel like we don't know what to do in these questions sometimes. We feel like there's a lot that we must cover. Okay, so while I wait, I think I'm going to start this question, and then if anything comes up, you can put it in the chat, and I can answer you. So it says diagram A and B show the ventral, which means the bottom view of skulls of 2 organisms, and they are not drawn to scale. The most important thing out of this picture, everybody, that they're clearly pointing to is the foramen magnum, which we should know is this opening over here. And we know it's one of the most important structures because it indicates the entrance of the spinal cord into the skull, and it tells us who is and is not bipedal. Now, already in the exam, you should be able to look at these 2 skulls and decide who is and isn't bipedal. When we speak about the foramen magnum, we say that it is either more forward, like this one here, or more backward. Please do not, I repeat, do not say it is central or more central. No. When we talk about the placement of the foramen magnum, you either say it's more forward or it's more backwards, because this is technically the back of the head. This is the front of the skull or the head. So we would say that the foramen magnum is more forward in this individual and more backwards. Now, already looking at these 2, we should know who is bipedal, or at least habitually bipedal, meaning they walk on 2 legs all the time. And it's this one over here. How did I know that? Because the foramen magnum is set more forward, okay, it means that it can support the body weight in an upright position evenly. So that's how I know that for certain. But before we continue, I want to also highlight a couple of other differences in these skulls, and you'll see it's going to be useful later on. Another difference between these 2 skulls, which they are actually pointing out, is there is a difference between the mouth structure and the teeth of these 2 individuals. And that's something else you need to take note of as well. But you can't see anything else here. You can't see the sagittal crest. You can't see the prognathous jaw. You cannot see the slope of the face. You cannot see anything, the eyebrow bones. So there's the only two defining things that we can see when we look at the base of the skull. So let's go into our first question. It says, which diagram represents the skull of a bipedal organism? Now, look, I've already identified it. It's going to be B, right? Then it says, give one visible, and this is important. It means you must be able to see it in the diagram for your answer in question 3312. Again, it is for 2 marks, so you can't just say one word, okay? And your reasoning is going to be the foramen, right? So to get the first mark, you are going to say the, what was I going to say here now? Let me rub that out. We're going to say the foramen magnum is more forward, tick, right? That's your first reason. And I'm just going to write the rest of the reason down lower because I'm going to run out of space. So the foramen magnum is more forward to support an upright, even distribution of weight in bipedalism. Sorry, I wrote that very, very skew. So that's going to be our reasoning, okay? And that's what gets you your second mark. So it's to support an upright, even distribution of weight in bipedalism. And so that is where our spinal cord directly enters into the back of the base of the skull, right? Let's move on to our next question. It says, tabulate, which means draw a table, 2 visible differences between the upper jaws in the diagrams between A and B that represents the trends in human evolution. Now, a trend, everybody, is a change over time. So when we are drawing this table, and again, I'm going to add in a blank page so I can draw it for you, there are some things you must include. It's for 5 marks. Please remember that when you draw anything, it must have a heading, right? So you're going to have to say something like table showing, and then ... whatever it is. And this one is going to be table showing the differences between skull A and skull B, okay? Then you go ahead and you draw your table. It must be in a table shape. In other words, you must use your ruler. And now you've got 2 column headings. And what we can do here is we can put here diagram. Oops. Oh, let me get rid of that. Diagram A. Or you could say skull. Doesn't matter. So the alternate would be like skull B, right? So it doesn't actually matter which heading you write there. And now you have to write differences. Now remember, your differences must read from left to right. So whatever you write on the left-hand side must complement what you write on the right-hand side. So let's go have a look at the differences in the skull. Other than the foramen magnum, what about their jaws is different? So the first obvious thing is going to be the shape of the palate, right? A has a rectangular palate. There's the rectangular palate. B has the parabolic palate. So we're going to go here, rectangular palate, parabolic palate, right? That's what I mean by it must read right, left to right. They must complement each other. The next one requires you to look carefully, but the other aspect of the upper jaw, everybody, is these teeth over here. Now, I'm actually going to rub out this so I can see the picture a little bit clearer because I want to show you something. But the first one that I see here is a difference in canine size, because remember it's saying trend in the question, which means how is the trend changed? How is the the jaw, the teeth, the palate, how's it changed? So in A, they have large canines, but in B, they have small. So we've got large canine, small canine. Now you could actually stop there and get 5 out of 5, because you get 1 for drawing your heading of the table, and then you'd get 2, 3, 4, 5, and that would get you your 5 out of 5. But there is actually another option here if I look very carefully, and this is an alternate. If you look in the diagram, I'm going to highlight it in a color, and I'm going to zoom all the way in. Do you see this little space in there, right? The space in between these teeth. In actual fact, let me make the highlighter thinner. This little space there, and there's a little space there too. If you know what that is, you can also write the following. That is a diastema. So in diagram A, the diastema is present, and in diagram B, the diastema is absent. What is the diastema, if you are thinking that to yourself? It is the little space. If I go back to my picture, it's this little space over here where the lower canines in the lower jaw would fit in. So the teeth can like lock into one another. If you think about it like that, they lock in, and there must be an empty space. And so that's what this little space is on either side. That one is a little harder to see, and maybe you didn't know that it was there, but that is another one. There might be probably maybe another one that I'm not thinking off the top of my head here, but those are my 3 go-tos that I would provide, and you only need to give 2 of these. Okay, right. Fabulous. Let's go on to the last question before we look into the chat to see if there's anything you want to ask me. The last one says, explain the significance of the shape of the spine that is associated with skull B. So already we've established that skull B is a bipedal organism, but what is the shape of its spine? The shape of the spine, as we should know, is an S-shaped spine. Okay, right? And this question says explain for 2 marks. Now, what that means is you have to give a statement and then a reason. So it says explain the significance, like the importance, like the function, basically. Explain the function or the reason why it is the shape it is. But first of all, to get full marks, you have to say what the shape is first. So under your explain, your statement is going to be as follows. You're going to say the spine is S-shaped. That's your statement. So that's the first mark. Reasoning. So why is it S-shaped? For flexibility and supporting an upright body weight over the center of the body. And that's your reason. Okay? So it's all about the S-shaped spine providing flexibility and support for an upright body weight over the center of the body, which basically means if I were to like draw that in a stick figure, if I just remove all of this, this is what I mean. Okay. What you want in order to support the body weight is, if this is the side of the head, right? We've got an S-shaped spine, and then our legs and arms sit off of it. This provides flexibility because it can squish down. Okay, it's got some shock absorbing in it. That's why we have the S. If it was just a C shape, it would be very difficult to have flexibility. Like that would be our legs and our arms. It would be very difficult to be flexible. This gives us more flexibility. Also, you'll notice that this allows for upright body weight distribution, which means the body weight sits through the middle of the body over here, like that, over our feet. Versus this one, it leans too far forward. It's in front of our feet, and it would basically make us fall forward. So that's why we want to have it over the middle. Okay. Do we have any questions right now for this section? I just want to see, there was a comment, but I'm just trying to go back to it. Hi, I think this is, I'm just sorry, I can't see the whole comment, so I'm just gonna, without disrupting the live, I'm just trying to see the whole comment. There we go, I'm just gonna move my camera over. So hi, Miss Angela, I just wanted to check, is there a live video for the paper 1 sup exam? If you mean, did I go over the June exam, the 2021, then last week I did a lot of questions from that paper already, yes. So that one is already up from last week or the week before when we did it. But I have done a whole bunch of sup questions already. That was what I did last week. We did a whole bunch from there too. Okay. Any questions on humans? No? Oh, here we go. I struggle with the nervous system section for the 2022 diagram on the eye. I'm trying to think if we did that question already. Let's have a look at the questions we did last week because I've saved them here. If it wasn't, let me scroll back and see. No, we didn't do it in that session. What I can do is we are still going to do another session for paper 1. We're just doing paper 2 stuff today. But we are going to do another, and I can build in some of those questions from the SUP when we do the next session, because we are going to do at least another 2 lessons together, even more probably before the final. But that's when I can do it for you. Okay. I'm going to move on, just for time's sake, to our next question. I'm going to let you have a little look at it. Don't automatically think, by the way, that this is a plant hormone question, because I did when I looked too quickly. It's actually a genetics question. Mahi, I see your comment. I will definitely make sure we do some questions from that past paper. Okay, let's go into this next question. This is quite a lot of reading, and you should expect to get at least 2 investigative questions in your final, hey? This being one of them that we might see. So it says, the herbicide glyphosate is used to control weeds, that's its purpose, in maize fields. The herbicide kills the weeds, but it can also kill the maize plants. It has been found that some weeds have developed a resistance to the glyphosate treatment. Scientists carried out an investigation. Now, this next sentence is important because it's the aim. To determine the development of glyphosate resistance in weeds. The weeds were treated with the same concentration. Let's highlight that because we need to know that. Each year from 2009 to 2016, and the percentage of glyphosate resistance in the field was recorded every year. So that's what they recorded, the percentage. The results are shown as below. So we've got years and we've got resistance. And before we go any further, let's interpret the table. So it says how resistant to the weeds the glyphosate application was occurring. I'm just trying to break this down now. So basically what we're looking at here is as the years progressed, the weeds and their resistance to the herbicide seems to be increasing, right? So as we go down, there is an increase in resistance. Okay, so what does this mean? Well, and how does this apply to paper 2 and the topics you've done? So you have done natural selection, and you have also done genetics and genetically modified organisms too, and evolution today. And what you're seeing here is a organism, the weed, that is basically evolving through natural selection to become resistant to the herbicide. And we see this in other examples like antibiotic resistance. You might have learned that in class. You might have also seen like mosquitoes that were resistant to DDT, which is an insecticide. And so what we see here is an example of a question based on evolution today. So this is under the evolution section. This is how they can also ask natural selection, right? These are the questions that people fear the most because they're not straightforward. They require you to understand what's going on. So now we've sort of broken down what's happening and what is happening inside the table. Let's go into the questions and see what they want from us. First of all, it says, describe the change in glycophosphate resistance over time of the investigation. And it is for 3 marks, and it's a describe, and it says the change in resistance. Now, it's for 3 marks, which means, yes, you are going to need to mention 3 things. So the first thing in terms of the change is you need to mention how the years increase. So as the years increase, okay, the resistance increases, right? Which it does. 10% is resistant, then 20%, then 30, 40, 50, 50, 60, 60. But that's only going to get you 2 marks because they want you to look very carefully and notice that in 2015 and 2016, it actually equals out. It levels out. So you must mention that for the 3rd mark. So as the years increase, the resistance increases until it becomes stable, or it plateaus, or it stops increasing. You could say anything like that because that's what it's doing. It's increasing, it's increasing, it's increasing, it's increasing, and then it gets to 2015 and then it stops increasing, right? It just remains the same. And that's why you would get 3 marks because you're going to get 1 for mentioning the years, 1 for mentioning the change in resistance, and 1 for the fact that eventually it becomes stable and doesn't change anymore. Okay. Right, next question. Calculate the percentage increase in glycophosphate resistant weeds from 2010 to 2015 and show all your working out for 3 marks. So I mentioned this in my prediction video tomorrow, but this is a very, very common question, like a style of question. They really want you to be able to calculate the percentage increase or percentage decrease. And it's pretty straightforward, the maths. So you don't need to panic too much. And I'm going to show you how easy it actually is to calculate the percentage increase or decrease. So let's just go back to the table and select the piece of information we want. So it says calculate the percentage increase in glycophosphate from 2010, so here, to 2015, so there. Okay. So all you have to do is take the 2 numbers, which is 65, okay, right? You're going to so that's the final value, minus the initial value, which was 20, okay? And then you are going to divide by the initial value times by 100. Now, I don't have my calculator with me here, and my phone is my calculator, and I'm busy doing this live lesson with my phone now, so I can't put this in my calculator to figure it out. But you should get a percentage if you put this into your phone. So what you should get here is, what is that, 45 over 20 times by 100. And it's probably, I'm guessing because I'm doing the maths in my head, but this should be like 200 and like 5% increase, something like that. And that does make sense, everybody, because it might even be more actually, because I can't think of what all the maths is right now. It could be even more than this. I wish I had my calculator with me so I could do this. So I don't want to write that as the answer if it's not the answer. But essentially, I know that it's going to be correct, the answer, whatever it is, because this number is going to be the outcome. Oh, Mahi, if you have a calculator and you've done that for us, that'd be great. Thank you. 225. Okay, which is perfect, which makes sense. And the reason why it makes sense, thanks, Pearl. It makes sense because if you think about it, right, and this is just some like me teaching you very basic, quick maths. And apparently you don't really learn this in maths. Maybe if you do maths lit, you learn this, right? Or maybe if you do accounting, you learn this. But if it was 20 and then it became 40, that would be 100% increase because you've doubled it, right? So because it's 60, 65 is the end sort of goal here, it makes sense that roughly the answer is going to be in the 200s, because if I double it and I get to 40, that's 100%. And if I add another 20 to get to 60, that's another 100%. So that's 200. So this is definitely looking like the right answer. I know we've put it in our calculator and we know it's the right answer. But if you're sitting there thinking, am I right? Have I made a mistake? Because sometimes people make a mistake here and it doesn't actually make sense what they've calculated. And so remember, just to go over it again, it is the final value minus the initial divided by the initial times by 100, which gives you your percentage increase. Okay, right. Let's move on to the next question. Scientists isolated the gene for the glyphosate resistance from the weeds, and they used it to genetically modify maize plants. Explain the economic benefit of making the maize plants resistant to the glyphosate. So this is actually a great sort of higher order question, because it's not just asking you random content. It's actually asking you to give a reason. Why do you think it would be economically beneficial to make the maize plants resistant to the glyphosate? In other words, they don't die if you use the phosphate on them. So economic benefit, remember, is a money benefit. Okay? So how are we going to benefit via the money? That's what we want to say. So it's for 3 marks, which again means we must make a statement and then a reason and then another reason, because it's out of 3, right? So our statement. Fewer maize plants will die, right? Because remember, the glyphosate also kills the maize. So fewer maize plants die, which means then more yield. Oh, that's not how we spell yield. Whoops. More. I did it again. More yield. That's yield. Okay. More yield means more money. Actually, those are 2 separate points. I beg your pardon. They're not the same. So fewer plants will die. More yield means more money. Okay. And those are your 3 points. So fewer maize plants will die, tick, which means you will have more plants to sell. And you could say that, more yield / to sell, tick, which means more money, tick. Okay. And that's what your economic benefit is. Now, last but not least, I chose this question again on purpose so we could practice doing a graph. Everybody, I really think that everybody here should be able to draw a graph for their final. But not only just draw a graph, get full marks for it. And in my prediction video, you'll see that I encourage you to practice drawing your graphs and just make sure that you know what you're doing. But also, you will see in the video tomorrow, I suggest that you do pie charts because many of you don't know how to draw a pie chart. But don't worry, don't panic. Today, coming out today, so today's YouTube video that's going to come out this afternoon, I do a past paper question and I show you how to draw a pie chart. So don't panic if you didn't know how to do it. That's also coming out that's today's video that's going to be released later this afternoon. Okay, so let's do this last question. Draw a bar graph, great, so they tell us which graph, to illustrate the results of the investigation in the first 4 years. That's so important. Don't overlook that. So many students just go, draw a bar graph to illustrate the results. They don't look carefully that they can only, and they must only do the first 4. So it's just these first 4 years, because you will actually lose marks if you draw all of them. They only want the first 4. So I'm going to do a very rough drawing. I'm going to add in a page. So what do we mark and what do we look for at the end of the year? First things first, you must always have your heading, right? And your heading must have the following things in it. It must have the type of graph and it must have all the variables, which means the independent and dependent variables must be in the heading, okay? Then you're going to take your ruler and you're going to draw your axes, like so. And I'm just going to go back and see what are we counting in. So we're counting in years and percentage, okay. So before I put any intervals on here, I'm just going to remind myself this is time, brackets years, and I'm just going to draw this sideways. This is, what is this called? This is glycophosphate resistance. Glyphosate resistance, and most importantly, put the percentage in brackets, everybody, your unit of measurement. All right, and that is now our graph. Now, please remember this is a bar graph, and we're going to do it in intervals of years. Now, it starts at 2009, everybody. So to show that a year is missing, because we are not going to plot from the beginning of time, right? What we're going to do is, if you would have your ruler in front of you, like now you're holding it on your page, you are going to do your interval lines like this, right? All the way along. I'm actually just going to make them stretch across. Now, I suggest everybody that you do the following. When you are doing these interval lines all the way across, you need to provide more than you are going to use. So I'm going to show you what I mean by that when I start drawing. But as you can see here, they're evenly spaced out on the lines of the page. You're going to use your ruler to put them about 1 centimeter apart from one another. But you're going to put a whole bunch. And I'm going to show you why you need to use so many once I start plotting. Should actually be one there. There we go. Now they're evenly spaced. And then the same for going up. My graph always starts at 0. And let's just go back and look at our data. It starts at 10. So it goes 10, 20, 32, 42. So it's there. I think for a good graph, I'm going to draw this in, I could do it in 5s, I think. So we're going to go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, and one more for 50, just so it's a beyond there. Okay, right, so there's my graph. And now we're going to go back and have a look. I got a plot at the 10, the 20, the 32, the 42. So this is what I wanted to show you and why you need so many at the bottom. Okay, the first amount is at 10. So please pay attention to what I'm about to do now. You are not going to plot the first point over here. Because you are drawing a bar graph, you need a middle line. So I'm going to take this line, I'm going to show you now, and I'm going to go up to 10, and that's going to be my point. That's going to be my bar. You're then going to take your ruler and you're going to draw up, over, and down. This line over here is so important, everybody. Please do not leave it off. There must be a little interval line in the middle of every bar. This is 2009. But as I mentioned earlier, we skipped some years, didn't we? Because there's years before this. So what you must do is this double hash line. Maybe your teacher taught you a squiggly like this. Both of them are acceptable, but basically what this means over here is there are years missing before this. They are omitted. We've left them off. Okay? Oh, keep rubbing everything out. This is 2009. Right, I'm going to do it again for the next one so you can see. The next value is 20. I'm going to skip a line over here. And then I'm going to look at the next 3 because this is going to be my edge of my bar, my center of my bar, my edge of my bar. So I'm going to take this middle one. I'm going to go up. There's its center point. I would take my ruler, draw my bar around like that. And now what you have is your bars are equal sizes and they are equally distanced with the interval line in between. And that is why I want you to do it this way. Please don't do the following. This is what I don't want you to do. I'm going to show you what I don't want because you're going to get it wrong and then they're not going to get you full marks. I don't want to see this. That with a line over there maybe. Okay? Or a line over there and a line over there and nothing in the middle. It must be in the middle. Okay? You must have your intervals like we drew at the top here going all the way along. You cannot just have your bars like this. They must have this center line in the middle of them. So that's why we're doing it that way. Let me plot the rest. So we've got 32 and 42. So again, I'm going to skip this line here and use these next 3. So 32, there's 30. It's about halfway, so it's about there. And I'm going to plot up, over, down. And then the next one, skip a space. And we're going to go 42. So that's going to be about there-ish. So we go up, over, down. Obviously, you're going to do this with a ruler, so it's going to come out nice and neat. And that's what your graph should look like. And you should get now 6 out of 6. Okay? Any questions on graphs, everybody? And like I said, today's video, I'm going to walk you through pie charts because I don't think we all know how to draw a pie chart. That's the video that's going to come out this afternoon. Any questions on this section here? This is all about not artificial selection, excuse me. This is all about resistance and evolution in the modern time. That's what this is. So if you're wondering where does this fit into what you've learned, it fits into evolution today and how things create resistance due to natural selection. Even though they haven't asked a natural selection question here, they have actually asked you indirectly an evolution question. Okay. I'm going to show you what the next question is. I think this is our last question that I'm going to cover in this session today. I chose this one because it's not so nice actually. This one is as you can see, I took this from the sup paper this year. So this is the 2022 supplementary paper, the one that would have been written in June. And I actually think some of these others that we have done here have also come from the supplementary paper. That's why I chose them. But this one, I'm going to give you a little bit of time also to go over. This one is not so nice. You'll see now. Miss A, what about writing the X and the Y on the graph? You don't need to. It's not necessary if you mean this. So a lot of teachers tell you to like put the arrows on the ends and then put X and Y. It's not necessary. You don't get marks for that. you get marks for the following letters. I'll show you. You get one for heading, type, scale, label, plotting. Heading, type, scale, label, 2 for plotting. That gives you your 6 marks. So at the end of the year, that's all they're looking for. And if they needed a key, then that would also be a mark. But we don't need a key for this because we're only plotting one thing. Okay. All right. We're going to do this question. I'm actually ending off on one of the harder questions we're going to do today. You'll see now why I called it a harder question. It's very, very application based. It requires some in-depth knowledge. Okay. Here we go. So it says a population of lizards on island A. They were all suited to feed mainly on insects. Scientists moved 5 adult pairs of this lizard species to a neighboring island, Island B. Here they reproduced and a new population formed. Island B has a large supply of plants and tough fibrous leaves and fewer insects. So there's a difference already in diet. Exposure to this new environment may have caused the lizards to undergo evolution. 36 years later, scientists returned to Island B to conduct further investigations on the lizard population there. They observed that the jaw size of the lizards had increased. Scientists also analyzed the stomach contents of the lizards and found that they were mainly plant-based, which means they were eating more plants than insects. However, they also confirmed that the 2 populations still belong to the same species. So we have now established the following things. I'm going to draw it out so we can just imagine it. Mahi, do we only use a key for a pie chart? No, you can use a key for a double bar graph, a double or triple line graph. That's when you'd use a key. I'll go back for you if you want me to show you what that would look like very quickly. Sorry, I know we're in the middle of that question, but I want to answer you briefly. If you have like a line graph, but you've got to plot 2 lines like this, right? You've got to put shapes around the dots like that. And then off the side here, you'll have your key, and then you'll tell me what the squares are, and then you'll tell me, what the circles are. And that's your key. So you can have a key for lines. You can also have a key for bars. A double bar graph is when there is like 2 bars touching like that. Often we use that for like before and after. So that's why you would need a key, because you need to know that this represents before the experiment and this represents after. And that's also why you would then have a little key on the side here telling me what the pattern means. And please only use patterns, don't use color. Okay, so either patterns like this for bars or shapes like this for line graphs. Okay. All right, anyway, getting back to this question. The lizards. So let's just envision this, right? We had Island A. We took some individuals and placed those individuals on Island B. Okay, both islands still exist. If we take individuals from Island A and individuals from Island B and we put them together and we allow them to mate, they are still producing offspring if they come together. Therefore, they are the same species. Now, I'm jumping ahead a little bit here because I'm assuming they are making offspring because they said that they confirmed that they are species. And remember, that comes back to you knowing what a species is, which is one of the questions here now. So let's actually go through the questions and answer them. Number 1, it says, describe how the scientists could confirm that there was a change in the jaw size between lizards A and lizards B. So how could they confirm this, right? So this is probably where you're scratching your head thinking, this is obvious. Wouldn't they just measure their jaws? And the answer is yes. That's how obvious this question is. The most important thing is you needed to say that you measured the jaws of the original population and the new population and then compare them. And that's how you get 3 marks. So let me show you how you would structure that answer lower down on the page. So to get 3 marks, you're going to say, you're going to measure population A jaw. Then you're going to measure population B jaw. You can even say they get an average, right? Like an average size for each population. And then you're going to say, you're going to, sorry, we spell compare. Compare. We're going to compare the size or the average, if that's what you want to say. And that's how scientists would be able to know there was a difference. And that's it. Those are your 3 marks. We measured pop A, measured pop B, and we compared. Done. Okay? Don't overthink it. Some of these questions are really easy, but you sometimes get caught up in the moment. And the answer is very obvious. Okay. Let's move on to the next one. Number 2 says, explain how the larger jaws of lizards on island B would be structurally suited to eat tough fibrous leaves for 3 marks. Remember, this is an explain question, so what do we need? We need a statement, reason, right? Because this is out of 3. So, statement, reason. Okay? So, explain how the larger jaws of the lizards would be structurally suited to eating tough, fibrous leaves. Okay? So, statement. Larger jaws make chewing easier, right? Now, linked to making chewing easier, our reasoning behind that, or our support for that, is if we have larger jaws that make it easier to chew, then we can chew more tough, or you can say fibrous as they call it, chew more of tough or fibrous leaves. And then what you can also say for your other reason is the larger jaws have more strength, right? Which, if you think about it, is important, because if you're going to chew tough fibrous leaves, right, you want large jaws, because those large jaws are going to make chewing easier, and they're going to make chewing easier on tough and fibrous leaves, and that then means that they also have more strength in their jaws to do that. So that's what our statement and our 2 reasons are going to be about. If you struggle with thinking about, well, what do I say about this statement? Like, how does she expect me to get this statement out? Because that's the hard part. If you can get the statement out, then these sort of follow on afterwards. Essentially, the statement always comes from telling me about this thing that we are talking about. So explain the larger jaws. So make a statement about the jaws. The larger jaws are stronger. Statement, right? Then you can give me your reasons. Or the larger jaws, what about the larger jaws? Make chewing easier. That's your statement. But now tell me why they make chewing easier. Because they have more strength. because you can chew more fibrous leaves. In other words, you don't get as tired, and the emphasis is on more. Okay. Right, let's move on to our next question. Number 3. How did the scientists determine that the two populations of lizards on both islands still belong to the same species? So what they would have done is they would have allowed them to mix, interbreed, and if they produced fertile offspring. And that's what you need to say. Not viable, please. No, 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 no. There's no such thing as viable offspring when we talk about the definition for species. Viable means, it refers to a pregnancy. A pregnancy is viable, not an individual. That means that the offspring that are produced are fertile and they can make more of themselves. So those are the two things we're going to say. We're going to say we mix and allow them to interbreed, tick, and they will produce fertile offspring, tick, if they are the same species. Done. Okay. Next question. Explain how the possible effect that evolution of the lizards has on biodiversity. Okay. Again, this is one of our explain questions. This one is for 2 marks. So we have remember, statement, reason. We don't need 3 reasons on this one or 2 reasons on this one. So explain the possible effect. So what is the possible effect? That's going to be our statement. And then our reason will follow. So what is the possible effect on biodiversity? Statement. It will increase biodiversity. But now you need to tell me why. Okay? That's your reason. Now you need a little bit of knowledge on evolution and the fact that when things evolve and new variations, remember the word variation, when there's a variation, it increases biodiversity. So we've said it will increase biodiversity. Reason, because there is now more genetic variation. And that's it. Because when you have genetic variation, you have more biodiversity. And that's what gets you your 2 marks. Okay. Last but not least, this very, very long question. I'm sure you can see it here. Number 5, use Darwin's theory of natural selection to explain the evolution of the lizards with large jaws for 7 marks, everybody. This is a big one, okay? This is a make or break question. This is a question that gets you a 70 instead of a 60, or this gets you a distinction. So instead of getting 75%, you can now get 80% if you get this question perfectly. Now, when you answer this question, the first thing you should be thinking of is your exam guideline. Everybody should know the exam guideline answer for natural selection. Okay, you can find it in your guideline, in the 2021 guideline for life sciences. It is bullet pointed for you, and all you have to do is write those exact same bullet points with one insertion, which is the following: the lizards. Do not just write what the guideline says as is. Okay, so what I mean by that is the first sentence of the guideline says something like there is variation in a population, right? And then it goes on to say something like there is favorable and unfavorable characteristics, right? That's what it says in the guideline. You can't just leave your explanation, like that. You must fill in the lizards here. So instead of saying there is variation in a population, What we are going to say, and I'm going to put it here in different color, is you are going to say there is variation in the size of jaws in lizards. Okay, you got to make your explanation about the paragraph. Don't just use the guideline as is. You've got to shape it to the question. But if you know it off by heart, the exam guideline one, this is easy. So there's variation in the size of jaws in lizards. When you go on to say there are some favorable and there's some unfavorable, you can't just say that as is. You must make it match the jaws. So those with the larger jaws survive. Those with the smaller jaws die. You see what I'm doing here now? I'm not just saying there's variation in population and those that are favorable survive, those that are unfavorable die. The ones that survive reproduce, pass on the genetics, and that's now more frequent in the population. That's the standard answer. That's the exam guideline answer. And you only give the pure guideline answer if it's asking for the theory with no animal or no example. This question is asking you to use an example. So you take the template answer, that's what I call it, a template, because then you can use it, you can shape it. You take the template from the guideline, and now you substitute in all of the variables, all of the information for this question, which is about what? The sizes of the jaws in lizards, and that the larger jaws allow you to survive better and the smaller jaws lead to your death. And you would go on to explain the fact that the ones that survive reproduce, and that means that the gene or the allele is more frequent in the population, and therefore more large-jawed lizards are born. And that gets you 7 out of 7. I'm not going to write down all the bullet points now, but roughly it's about 7 bullet points worth of information. No, you mustn't write in bullet points, please. If you are tempted to, I would much rather you not write in bullet points and just write one sentence every line with a full stop at the end. Okay. Now, I'm going to ask if there's any more questions. I'm just going to wait a couple of seconds for you to put them in the chat. Otherwise, if you've missed any portion of this and you've just joined us and you're worried about what you've missed out, this video is going to go on to my YouTube channel now this afternoon for you to go back and watch. Remember, everybody, the prediction video for the members is coming out tomorrow, so you're going to get to see it before anybody else does. Everybody else in the public is only going to get to watch it on Friday. And then the paper 2 one for you guys, for the members, is going to come out on Saturday, so you'll also get to see it long before everybody else, which is great. Today's video as well, I feel like there's a lot coming out in content, but today's actual scheduled video this afternoon, I'm going to be telling you how to do a pie chart, everybody. So how to draw a pie chart, how to make sure you're ready for the exams, because I have a sneaky suspicion that they're probably going to ask you to draw a pie chart this year. They've been asking you to draw a graph every year, paper 1 or paper 2, but I want to make sure that you're all ready for that. So that's going to come out later today. Keep your eyes peeled for that one. That is a public video, though. It's not just going to be a members video. If there are no questions in the chat, I think I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. And good luck with studying and with your exams. I know you're all very, very busy, and you have so many more still to cover and many content subjects still coming up. But if that's it for the lesson today and no one's going to ask anything else, going once, going twice in the chat. Okay, I'm going to say goodbye and see you all again soon. Bye, everybody.